Standard Bank's business and commercial banking arm will be holding a conference tomorrow and on Friday, and this is to look at unlocking the economic potential of the African continent. Now, the conference comes at a critical time when a number of countries, including South Africa, have been served with US reciprocal import tariff duty letters, with South Africa lumped with a 30% levy. Now, discussions will, of course, be had around how the continent can fulfill its potential, given its national resource endowment and, of course, a large youthful population. But to give us a sense of what's to be expected and to come out of that conference, I'm joined now by Bill Blackie, who's the CEO of Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Bill, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Nice to see you this morning. Thank you.
And of course, you know, it's a difficult time, but equally an exciting time, one could say, for this particular conference, given the backdrop against which it is taking place. Now, it's a pivotal time given what happened this week. Trade tensions are ramping up. AGOA not likely to be renewed this September. So what are some of the key discussions around how continental players can mitigate some of the effects of what I've just mentioned?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for your time, Sakina. You know, you're so right. It's really about focusing on opportunity. So while there have been challenges with respect to American tariffs, it's also important to remember that just last month, China announced zero tariff for 53 African countries. That was presented at the CAETE conference. That's a core conference with respect to how China engages with Africa. At the same time, we're investing significantly in the development of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and area. This is the support of local trade amongst African countries together. You know, today we see the continued growth of continental trade. In fact, for us in business commercial banking in South Africa, it's the single biggest bloc that we trade with now under the AfCFTA. So the key point is, as you identified, it's about looking for opportunity and unlocking that opportunity for African entrepreneurs.
And speaking of the Africa Free Trade Area and that agreement, again, just in terms of how far we've progressed in making sure that there is ease of movement of people, of resources, and just an ease of doing business, how are we faring on that score, Bill?
We keep making progress, and that's the key point, is that it's something that we as a bank invest in and support the Secretariat of specifically, in order to make sure that over time we continue to unlock each one of those barriers, whether they're tariff barriers, whether they're physical barriers, ports, entry positions into different countries, etc. And so we continue to make progress, and it's very significant for where it really impacts is on the family-owned businesses in Africa. And that's our focus, both in South Africa and across the continent, making sure that we make it easier for family-owned businesses to do business.
And then, Bill, investment in infrastructure is, of course, going to be key. It's a key issue because that will facilitate that movement of people, of goods across the African continent. But we do know that part of the problem is that a lot of the infrastructure across the continent is outdated. So what kind of conversations can we expect around that particular issue?
You know, infrastructure is something that as a bank we've invested a huge amount of money in, and we continue to invest in skills and capabilities. You're absolutely right that today there are significant gaps in infrastructure across the continent, but it's also important to realize how fast we're progressing, whether it's in public-private partnerships in the ports in Tanzania or the development of roads in Kenya. We continue to see really rapid development across the continent of infrastructural investment. Of course, the second point is you need to invest in infrastructure, but you also need to invest in energy. And that's, again, going to be a key conversation at the conference, is how do we continue to unlock the investment in energy, right from the big infrastructural facilities like Eskom, etc., across the continent, but also in renewable energy. Renewable energy and products like smart agriculture are critically important for unlocking the potential of Africa and Africa's economies.
And as we look at the continent as a developing one, you know, very often these conversations around energy become antagonistic because it seems to sometimes deteriorate into a zero-sum game, whereas I guess it's about taking stock of what is the reality for every country and then the continent as a whole, and gradually ramping up, towards where we want to go.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, energy is growth, and you need energy to grow economies. Every economy that we operate in has got slightly different opportunities and focus areas. So if you look at a country like Uganda, actually Uganda's got a huge amount of energy. What it lacks is distribution. And so the development of things like distributed energy for countries like Uganda is very important. It unlocks dairies, it unlocks schoolrooms, etc. So these, I think where you started was talking about opportunity, and that's the way we see it. We see it as unlocking opportunity both in South Africa and across the rest of the continent.
And you touched on this a while ago, Bill, the SME sector. And, this accounts for the majority of jobs created on the African continent. Now, how best can financial sector players like yourself aid in helping businesses not only to survive, but to actually thrive and scale?
Getting capital to SMEs and family-owned businesses is the most important thing that we can do as banks. And that's what our primary focus is now, is making sure that both in South Africa and across the continent, we develop the skills, the capabilities, the relationship managers, the technical platforms to deliver this capital to these companies. It actually doesn't really matter whether you a small family-owned business in Kibera outside of Nairobi, or whether you're a large family-owned business starting to build an oil capability in Nigeria. It's the same thing. You need capital to continue to grow, and that's what our focus is.
And just finally, Bill, people are, tired of talk shops. And, very often when you say conference, it's perceived as such. So ultimately, looking at this particular conference, what is Standard Bank's high-level engagement on unlocking Africa's potential, ultimately looking to walk out of this with? Because how do you say to people that we're going to walk out of here with real solutions, a real intent, and not just talking for 2 days?
Of course, I guess you'll have your naysayers in every situation. But what we're doing is we're bringing the best entrepreneurs, both in South Africa and across the continent, together into the same rooms to have conversations about how they unlock and support one another in their growth. Now, if you bring Africa's best entrepreneurs together into a room for 2 days and you can't unlock those conversations, then the challenge is really, I guess, with yourself. So it's not about talk shops, it's about really creating the opportunity for the best of the continent's entrepreneurs to talk together and find solutions.
Well, looking forward to hear what comes out of it. Thank you so much, Bill Blackie, CEO for Business and Commercial Banking at Standard Bank Group, talking to us about the Standard Bank's Business and Commercial Banking arm holding a conference, a 2-day conference, looking at unlocking the economic potential of the African continent. And that takes place, of course, on the 10th and 11th of July.